The wrong Rokyan. Reiko Sato had never been good at saying no. That's how she ended up running errands for half her office, despite it being her vacation week. After a grueling quarter end and yet another birthday she spent alone, Reiko decided she needed to unplug completely. She chose a quiet rural onsen town 3 hours from Tokyo. No Wi-Fi, no crowds, just silence, steam, and solitude. But after a long train ride, a confusing bus transfer, and a walk through winding forest paths, she arrived at what she thought was Yuzuki Onsen Ryokan. A weathered wooden gate creaked open as she stepped into a quiet courtyard shaded by maple trees just beginning to blush red. "Welcome!" called a voice, deep and warm. A man in his early 30s appeared from behind the Noren curtain. Tall, with sleeves rolled up and a towel slung over one shoulder, he looked more like a carpenter than an innkeeper. "You must be the new apprentice," he said, bowing with a quiet smile. Reiko blinked. "Apprentice?" "You're earlier than expected," he added, already turning. "Come in, I'll show you around." Her instinct was to correct him, but then she glanced back at the empty road behind her. No taxis, no buses for hours, and she was too embarrassed to admit she might have gotten the name wrong, so she nodded politely and followed him inside. The Ryokan was smaller than she expected, more like a large traditional home with only a few rooms. Everything smelled of hinoki wood and green tea. Tatami floors whispered beneath her feet. "I'm Itsuki," he said, gesturing around. "I inherited the inn from my grandfather, but it's been quiet for years. Locals still come, but tourists don't really stumble this far out." He showed her the guest kitchen, the garden, and finally the small outdoor onsen surrounded by mossy stones. "You'll help prep rooms, maybe cook, and if you're brave, chop firewood." She tried not to laugh. Chop firewood? She hadn't lifted anything heavier than a stapler in months. But that night, after a modest dinner and a long, quiet soak in the steaming spring water, Reiko found herself smiling at the stars. By day 2, she had washed futons, folded towels, and nearly burned the miso soup. She learned how to rake gravel in the Zen garden without disturbing its pattern. She even chopped wood, badly. "You grip it like a pen," Itsuki teased, correcting her stance. "Not everything's a spreadsheet." She blushed. "I work in accounting." Itsuki grinned. "Figures," he smirked. "You count things. I cook them." He stepped closer to the chopping block, picked up the axe, and handed it to her. "All right, accountant. Time to learn how to split more than numbers." She took it awkwardly, gripping the handle too high, her elbows tense. "Like this?" Not quite. He moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his chest at her back. His hands reached over hers, gently sliding them into the correct position. Hands lower, legs apart for balance. Like this. His voice was low, focused, but there was a new tension in the air, something unspoken. His fingertips brushed against hers as he adjusted her grip, and the contact sent a flicker of heat up her spine. She could feel the curve of his breath against her neck, and suddenly the air between them wasn't just warm from the sun. Reiko swallowed. She didn't dare move. "There," he said, his hands lingering a moment too long before he stepped back. "Try now." She raised the axe with shaky confidence, her pulse hammering louder than the cicadas. Something had shifted, and she wasn't sure she wanted it to shift back. As days went along, their banter grew easy. His sarcasm, dry but kind, made her laugh. At night, he played old enka songs on a dusty radio as they wiped down tables. Sometimes he told her stories about his grandfather, who had run the inn with quiet dignity and strict tea ceremony rules. "Why don't you advertise more?" she asked one evening. "It's beautiful here." I don't want crowds, he said simply. Some places are meant to stay small. Reiko didn't argue. She understood the comfort of quiet corners. By the end of the week, Reiko had forgotten about the wrong Ryokan. She'd stopped checking her phone. She even stopped counting how many towels she folded. In the evening, a soft autumn rain fell. After dinner, they shared a pot of plum wine on the Engawa veranda, watching droplets ripple across the koi pond. I'm glad you came, Itsuki said, voice low. Reiko hesitated. She could feel the truth pushing against her throat. I should tell you something, she began. I'm not actually… I know, he interrupted gently. You're not the apprentice. She blinked. You knew? He smiled. The real apprentice texted the day after you arrived. Said she missed her train. I figured it out when you offered to pay for your own room on the first night. Reiko's face turned crimson. Why didn't you say anything? He shrugged. You seemed like you needed the break. Her heart fluttered. I did, she admitted softly. More than I realized. They sat in silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. On her final morning, she stood at the gate, bag in hand. The sky had cleared, and a faint mist still clung to the trees. I can stay one more night, she said, half joking. You could stay 100, he said, not smiling this time. She looked up at him. Would you hire a terrible apprentice with a great eye for accounting? He reached for her suitcase. Only if she teaches me Excel. She laughed. And in that moment, surrounded by the scent of cedar, warm steam rising in the distance, and the quiet hum of something just beginning, Reiko realized she had checked into the wrong Ryokan. But maybe, just maybe, the right life.